Call this meeting to order. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Alderman Osteen. Alderman Morose.
Here.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Schuman. Here. Alderman Becker.
Here.
Mayor Harmonson.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Citizens communication. This is a time set aside on the agenda for citizens and visitors to address the mayor and board on any topic that is not a public hearing. For those here in person, speakers will be restricted to 3 minutes unless otherwise permitted. Minutes may not be donated or transferred from one speaker to another. Visitors attending via online will be in listen-only mode. Any questions or comments for the mayor and the board may be sent to City Clerk at tberreth@osagebeach.org no later than 10 a.m. on the board meeting date, the first and third Thursday of each month. Submitted questions and comments may be read during the citizens communications section of the agenda. The Board of Aldermen will not take any action on the item listed on the agenda, nor will it respond to questions, although staff may be directed to respond at a later time. The mayor and the Board of Aldermen welcome and value input and feedback from the public. Is there anyone here in person who would like to address the board tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Has the board had the chance to review the minutes and the bills list? Do you have any comments or questions from the board about either?
I've already talked to Carl with all the corrections I had.
Very good. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Schuman, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent agenda is approved. All right, we have no unfinished business tonight. New business, we have Bill 22-91. Is an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, amending Ordinance 19.75 with the LOR Engineering LLC, doing business as Cochran Engineering, which authorized an agreement for engineering services to waive the conflict of interest provisions and allow Cochran a function as engineer for the Oasis at Lakeport project. This is a first and second reading. City Attorney Ed Rucker, Gina Woods, I believe we have a...
Yeah, Ed, if you don't mind, I'll
Yes.
start. Mayor, members of the board, this is a request to modify the current contract. As you know, we're under contract with Cochran Engineering right now for services for engineering as the city's engineer, and that contract currently expires November 23. So we have talked internally about diversifying our engineer services, and it's kind of come up a little quickly because Cochran does have an opportunity to work on one of the biggest projects that's coming up. So in talking internally about how do we manage and how does that work, I did some research with our other cities, neighboring cities, and I know Chris Boone is here for you guys if you have direct questions from him. I don't want to speak for him on how he handles other cities. It is kind of it's less found that the exclusivity of our contract. We do think internally there's a benefit for developer and city to have the knowledge and experience of the same engineer. However, administration-wise, we would not only benefit from a diversity of other engineer companies, but we also would need to manage any conflicts of interest. And what that means is anything that Cochran Engineer or their divisions would do for the private development, they would not turn around and do their own review or inspecting. And that is a more common practice in other cities. Again, it can be a win-win for both the city and the private development because of quality, availability of engineers. They know what the city wants, so the process likely goes quicker. But because we're still under contract and it's not up, we were thinking that the contract was up in November, but it's one more year. So right now, I'm really just asking to approve for this particular project, but my further recommendation was in the next upcoming contracts, consider that as we get other contracted engineers and availability of us to have diversity. We do have contracts with 2 other engineer companies currently, so managing this specific project is feasible in my opinion. Chris is here if you guys have questions on him as far as that side of things.
All right, any comments or questions to Tina Woods or to Mr. Boone on the board? Alderman Ross.
First of all, I support this, but I do have a question for example, this project. Who's deciding, or what process are we using to decide who will be the city's engineering firm on this project?
So this particular project, one, we are prepared to put another RFP out to gather more master contracts with engineers. But in the meantime, depending on the time frame or how fast this moves, we are currently under contract with CMT, and we are currently under a contract with Anderson Engineering for 2 other projects. Unfortunately, Mike's not here, but one of the tasks I had asked him to do, because between him and Ed, they kind of handle the contract side, is seeing if those contracts already have that open-endedness. So we possibly will have somebody already contracted with, but just like I said, parallel and simultaneously, we are ready to put out an RFP, just as we did with Cochrane, to add that to that pool of expertise.
Okay, so, and I'm sure you all will, and the only question, what I'm getting at is there should be a way to demonstrate that we used a fair and legitimate
Yes.
process to determine who backs them up, versus we just decided this guy, for example. So, and I don't think that we would do that, and as long as we're planning to do so, then I have no other questions.
Nope.
Any other comments, questions? Alderman Rucker.
So at this stage, we are only authorizing Cochrane to work on this one other project within the city.
That is how this one is written. I know in my comments, I would further recommend that we look into opening it up, but this is the one project that is right, kind of upcoming and immediately. I know this is not the first time Cochrane's been requested to work on big projects. And previous year, those just didn't facilitate to this process or to this level of request. We will need to talk about that with potentially Beach Road and other projects that I'm not privy to names and whatever. So don't be surprised that we will be tackling more open-ended or other projects sooner, should you guys are comfortable with this.
I support this as well, but I'm also trying to figure out, I just want to make sure we know what we're voting on, and if we can move forward, as far as I'm concerned, with not waiting until November to fix it. I would like to see that, and that's going to the point of getting RFP out, getting the language changed so that we don't have to go through this each time. And because for all we know, as some of us do know, there's things that are going on right now that all of a sudden, tomorrow they could be asked to take and do something, and they're going to have to say no. And, and so
That can be handled.
for what it's worth,
Very timely.
I would like for us to go ahead and fix the problem and not wait till November. That's my 2 cents.
All right, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve first reading?
So moved.
Alderman Roche, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Ross, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. First reading passes. Second reading, Bill 22-91, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, amending ordinance 19.75 with LOR Engineer LLC doing business as Cochrane Engineering, which authorized an agreement for engineering services to waive the conflict of interest provision and allow Cochrane to function as an engineer for the Oasis at Lakeport project. This is a second reading. Any other questions or comments you just happen to think of? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading?
Motion to
Alderman
approve.
Rucker, do I have a second? Alderman Becker, roll call, please.
Alderman Osteen?
Yes.
Alderman Becker?
Yes.
Alderman Morose?
Yes.
Alderman Rucker?
Yes.
Alderman Schuman?
Yes.
Alderman Ross?
Yes.
All right, second reading passes. On to Bill 22-92, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the issuance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri's tax increment financing revenue notes, Osage Beach Commons redevelopment area, Series A, B, and C, to provide funds to fund certain development project costs and approving certain developments and actions in connection with the issuance of the notes. This is the first reading. City Attorney Ed Rucker, please.
Well, actually, this is way over my head. That's why I have my lawyer, Mark Spikerman, here to address This is part of proceeding with Osage Beach Commons, but Mark, you're up, and this is, guys, I will simply tell you, this is technical. However, it does not inure in any way to the city's detriment, and I think it's a good idea. But you have to have someone who has done this before to clearly understand it.
And the good news is I've attempted to reduce about 90 pages of legal documents into 3 PowerPoint slides.
Oh, I wish I'd known that before I read it all. Wrong.
Mark Speckerman, please.
Mark Spikerman, Gilmore and Bell. In 2017, the board approved the Osage Beach Commons redevelopment plan and a subsequent amendment to it. In 2017, they also entered into a redevelopment agreement with TSG Osage Beach, Inc., an affiliate of the Steinberg Group. In 2020, that agreement was amended to just basically reflect some COVID-related delays. That agreement as amended, I'm going to call the original redevelopment agreement, and that original redevelopment agreement really contemplates what we're doing here today. This is just implementing that. And as part of that implementation, we did identify just a couple of little tweaks we needed to make, which we can lay out here. So what does Bill 2292 do? It authorizes the issuance of 3 series of notes. Those 3 series of notes collectively add up to $4.55 million. $4.55 million is the number that's in the redevelopment plan. It's the number that's in the original redevelopment agreement. The 3 notes themselves are split up because we've kind of cut and sliced it a little bit. The A note is the sales tax portion of the TIF. The B note is the real estate taxes for everything other than Hobby Lobby. And the C note is the Hobby Lobby real estate taxes. And I'll get into why we did that in a little bit. The other thing it does is it approves a trust indenture. That's a technical document. That's what the majority of these pages are. It basically provides the terms and conditions of the notes. It's all consistent with the terms that are set forth in the original redevelopment agreement. UMB Bank is the trustee, and UMB Bank is the trustee on all, or most, if not all, of the city's obligations, including the Deerberg's TIF notes. Second, it approves another amendment to the redevelopment agreement. It's very short, and I'll get into that. And finally, it approves a tax compliance agreement. That tax compliance agreement is a technical document that gets entered into anytime there's a tax-exempt city obligation. Back in 2012, the city approved a tax-exempt bond compliance policy. As part of our due diligence, we looked at that. The city did a good job in 2012. That policy's still good. No changes are needed, but it does contemplate that we would enter into a tax compliance agreement every time we do a tax-exempt note. So what does the original redevelopment agreement say? It says, at the request of the developer, the city agrees to consider the issuance of notes. That's what we're here to do. The developer has requested it. It says consider. You don't have to. It's at the option. If you do, it says the special allocation fund notes shall bear an interest at a rate of 6.5%. And it also says even if you don't issue notes, the obligation to reimburse the developer for reimbursable costs still accrues interest at 6.5%. So there's no savings if you don't issue notes. And then finally it gets into the city may elect to issue all or any portion of the notes at a taxable or tax-exempt rate. When we say taxable, that means the owner of the notes has to pay federal income tax on the interest earned on the notes. Tax exempt, they don't have to pay federal income tax, and as a result, usually have a lower tax exempt rate is a better deal, both for the city and the owner of the notes, because 1, the city pays less interest, and 2, the developer gets a sort of net benefit because they don't have to pay federal income tax. So to do what we want to do here today, to maximize the amount of tax exempt notes that can be issued, there's a second amendment to the redevelopment agreement. It's basically what I bolded is the gist of the deal. If we can issue a note on a tax exempt basis, we take the interest rate down from 6.5 to 6. We save money. That'll, back of the napkin math, it's about $19,000 in year 1, $200,000 to $300,000 over the life of the TIF, depending on how fast the TIF actually pays off. The flip side of that is, because there's always, it's always a double-edged sword. Right now, the original redevelopment agreement says that they cannot challenge the assessed value of their property taxes at all. That inhibits, under federal tax law, the ability to issue tax exempt notes. It makes a governmental obligation basically secured by a private guarantee because they're stuck paying whatever it is. It can't be, they've given up their rights to treat it like a generally applicable tax where you and I can challenge our own taxes. So if we get rid of that, and what we're proposing here is actually to just get rid of it on everything other than Hobby Lobby. There's a lease with Hobby Lobby today that says they can't challenge their taxes. So that means by diverting the Hobby Lobby property taxes only to the C note, the C note is taxable, but the A and B notes can be tax exempt. And the A and B notes make up the majority of the 4.55 million. We have a few other just amendments, 4.5, 4.5A, 4.5B, just lining up some dates to make sure they correspond with Hobby Lobby having been completed this year. And then we've got just some clarification. There's many fail-safes, many clawbacks in the original redevelopment agreement, and we need to make sure that those work with the notes the way they were intended. So that's what 4.5C does. And then 5.4E, there was a provision in there that conflicted with what we normally see in trust indentures. So we now have a trust indenture that basically usurps that thing, and it actually has better terms for the city. It's more modern industry standard language. It basically allows the quicker payment of interest and principal, so the interest doesn't accrue as much. And that's really it. It's 90 pages of legal documents and 3 slides.
Questions, comments, board? Alderman Rucker.
I have a couple. First of all, on the assessed valuation.
Yes.
Obviously, that's put in there originally to protect the taxing entities so that they at least still continue to get what they were said. And I understand why it has to be removed because of the federal stuff. Does it add special means of appealing that? Or does if they are upset with the assessed valuation, does it follow the normal Board of Equalization procedures after they have, filed a request with the assessor's office, and then after that, if they're still refused, then the regular courts? I mean, I'm familiar with the process. So do they follow those normal ones, or is there special ones that they now follow?
Yeah, so with respect to Hobby Lobby first, they're still mandated to not appeal their taxes. And that's actually the one I'm most worried about, because I don't know if you've heard of the dark store theory, but it's the big boxes that regularly appeal the taxes. It's the more outlawed and periphery development that is in the process or hasn't yet occurred. That's the property we're removing the restriction on, or if this passes, it would be removed. And those properties would then follow the normal process just like anybody else, appeal to the county, go to the state tax commission if they don't like anything.
Okay, so okay. I just want to make sure there wasn't some kind of special provisions that they were allowed.
No, the purpose is to treat them as if any other property owner.
The amount of years that the taxes are going to be not fully 100% given to all the taxing entities and the sales tax to the city, does that time change from the original agreement that was signed because of all this?
No, in August of this year, you passed an ordinance basically implementing the TIF now that it was completed. The TIF has a 23-year clock starting from the date of that August ordinance, and this doesn't affect that.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Very good. Anyone else? Alderman Ross.
So I have a question about the 6.5% interest that was going to be paid on the special allocation fund.
Yes.
Who was going to be paying that prior to this agreement, or if this agreement was passed?
So the answer is TIF revenue. The developer, under the terms of the original redevelopment agreement, as they incur costs, which they did, they built a project, They've submitted paperwork showing that they've incurred $4.55 million of eligible reimbursable TIF costs. Until those dollars are reimbursed with TIF revenue, interest will accrue at 6.5%. The redevelopment agreement says we're not compounding that interest. It just remains current interest. But it will accrue no matter what. And it will only be paid when there's TIF revenue to pay it, either directly from the city or in the form of principal and interest on a TIF note.
So that 6.5% was basically defined as reimbursable costs, just like
Right.
public infrastructure.
Yep. The TIF Act permits interest to accrue on, and financing charges to be paid under the TIF
All right.
Act from TIF revenue.
Thank you, that's all I have.
All right. Anyone else? Alderman Becker?
Does the term notes equal bonds?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Is this still a pay-as-you-go TIF?
It is, you would almost call it more, it's essentially the Deerbergs model had the same deal. The note is a piece of paper security, like a bond. It is going to be issued directly to TSG, the developer. They intend to hold it, but they could at some point sell it. They could only sell it under the terms of the indenture and only to approved parties. But the rights for payment on the TIF note go with whomever owns the TIF note.
Okay. All right.
But to the extent, if Hobby Lobby closes tomorrow and nothing ever happens and no TIF revenue is ever generated, then that's the risk of whomever holds the TIF note, similar to a pay-as-you-go TIF, where you only get paid if you operate the facility.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
One last comment.
Yes, sir, Alderman Rucker.
I very much appreciate the 3 pages as compared to the 60 or 100. Please take note of that, Attorney Ed.
All right.
Studying brevity under Mr. Spiker.
One comment along that line. In the
Yes.
future, when you reduce them, which I'm really glad, could we get a copy of that? Sorry, I can't read those things that turn around here. It's almost too close to, so
Oh,
that we could have those.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can facilitate that.
That'd be
Yeah.
great, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I took Thanksgiving off, otherwise I would have probably
No.
sent it out a week earlier.
All right,
Good for
seeing
you.
none, do I have a motion to approve first reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Ross, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, first reading passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Spikeman. All right, moving on, Bill 22-93, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri. Missouri, I've read this 3 times, it makes sense. 2023 election procedures for the general municipal election to be held April 4th, 2023. This is the first and second reading. City Clerk, Power Bear.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is a bill that we need to do in order to hold a general municipal election. I'm sorry it's so late. I forgot to actually add it, so we have to have the first and second reading now because election or packets are available to be picked up starting on Tuesday at 8 a.m. So in order for that to happen, I need to have you guys approve to have the general election be held on April 4th.
All right, any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve first reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, second, Alderman Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, first reading passes. Second reading, Bill 22-93, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, 2023 election procedure for general municipal election to be held April 4th, 2023. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading?
So moved.
Alderman Morose. Do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Schuman. Roll call, please.
Alderman Morose?
Yes.
Alderman Rucker?
Yes.
Alderman Becker?
Yes.
Alderman Osteen?
Yes.
Alderman Ross?
Yes.
Alderman Schuman?
Yes.
All right, second reading passes. Next, we have a motion to purchase two 25-horsepower submersible pumps to lift station CL01 at 1442 Nichols Road from Municipal Pump Company Incorporated for $32,028.52. Public Works Operations Manager Kevin Crooks, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a motion to, again, purchase two 25-horsepower pumps for the CL01 station on Nichols Road. This is a fun one. This pump actually burned down, and we had Oceans Beach's fire service respond. The cord supplying power to one of these pumps burned and was close enough to the second pump that pump lead also burned down, necessitating both pumps to be replaced for the cost of $32,028.52, and I recommend approval.
All right, board, comments or questions? Alderman Rucker.
Is there any type of insurance on that kind of a loss? I understand mechanical, and wearing out, et cetera, all of those things, but is there anything at all we have insurance-wise?
That's a great question, and I wish I had thought of it prior to this point. It's possible.
We will
I know
look-
that there have been lightning strikes. We've got reimbursable costs from that. Now that I'm thinking through it, I'm going to say no off the cuff because the fire came about. I'm paraphrasing, but the fire came about because of there was a heavy curvature in the pump cable lead. We're getting inside baseball stuff, but that shouldn't be as sharp. So there's what's called a hanger rack where the cord hangs. That was probably too sharp in my estimation, and that eventually cut out or dug out the insulation, causing a short. So, I mean, it's something I should look into in the future. This doesn't happen very often. We do get power strikes, lightning strikes, but that's not something I actually considered, but it probably wouldn't be applicable in this case because of just the way the cord was hung. It was frankly kind of bush league. It should have had there's a device called Chinese fingers that will hold the cable in a more suspended way, if that makes sense, than hanging it on the cable rack. So I guess there's my long answer, but I'll definitely look into that. It's something that we should look into in the future, for sure.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman Osteen.
The budget line item for the requested amount is equal to the cost of the two pumps, but the bid shows an additional $1,500 for a service charge. Is that being waived, or where is that $1,500 being paid from?
I've heard both from this company. They for about a month or two told me this was mandatory, and it went through as mandatory, and now it's back as optional, and I declined. So the $1,500 is not part of the quote, witnessed by the fact that $14.26 times two is two pumps.
Correct.
Yeah, the service and installation startup fee was, I don't take that unless I'm forced to. Yep.
Okay, I was curious since the bid included that fee, but it wasn't requested.
All right, anyone else? Alderman Becker.
Kevin, what are the basic differences between these pumps and the next motion?
The impeller pitch and the RPM. Basically, so CL01 has a standard impeller pitch and RPM. So moving on to 27.2 Deer Run, that has almost twice the RPMs and a different impeller pitch, which is used for high head conditions when frankly, you just have to push up against a higher total dynamic head pressure. The size of them, if you're just looking at it from the outside, look exactly the same. But it's the internal components that where the difference comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the purchase?
Motion approved.
Alderman Ross, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Becker, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Next, moving on to motion to purchase 2 submersible pumps for AL 11 on Deer Run Drive from Municipal Pump Incorporated for $27,001.60. Again, Kevin Crooks, please.
Thank you again, Mayor. Again, this is for the purchase of 2 25 horsepower pumps. Again, on Deer Run, these were not burned down. One was found to be in poor condition in May, but still running. And then in late October, the second pump failed outright. And I decided to, rather than string that second one along, the first pump rather along, it's essentially running on one pump at this time, to be clear. It's necessitating, again, to replace both pumps. At this station, $13,580 per times 2, and I recommend approval.
All right. Comments or questions? Alderman Ross.
One question, Kevin. How old are these pumps? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, I don't. I know that it's vintage. These are called fin pumps, and actually in my packet I have pictures. It doesn't help you, but a fin pump tells me it's at least 20 to 23 years old. This is, we got our money out of these ones, for sure.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Osteen.
I'd assume it's ditto on the service fee.
Correct, sir. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, do I have a motion to approve the purchase? Alderman Rucker, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Alderman Morose. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Next, we have a discussion item. It's adding new sections 110.300 et seek, and yes, I looked up to how to pronounce that, et seek. Providing for rules and procedures for the conduct of business and meetings of the Board of Aldermen and repealing Resolution 03-16-06-001 that previously set out such rules and renaming the renumbering Article 4, Community Event Support. City Attorney Ed Rucker, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is housekeeping, but let me describe to you why. First off, it's nothing you have to vote on tonight, okay? Second is it's nothing you actually ever have to do if you don't want to. Now, why would I bring this forward? There is a time bomb, there's a procedural, political, and legal time bomb that exists in your lives, and it has existed for years. It exists in the lives of most legislative bodies, and it's called Robert's Rules of Order. The problem with Robert's Rules of Order is it's a 300 to 400 page thick, long little book designed for large organizations to harmonize and make their procedures make sense. It is incredibly complex, okay? It contains privileged motions and whether a motion is debatable or not, and in mind-numbing detail. Where this is a problem for you is as follows. I was talking to Mark Spikeman about this as he was asking me what was on the agenda tonight for the meeting. If Mark and I were on this, on the city council in the city of St. Louis, okay? And we got annoyed and we decided we were not going to let anything happen. Robert's Rules provides for anybody with enough energy to read it, enough material to stop a legislative body in its tracks. It is so complex that we could make motions to lay on the table, to suspend the consideration of the future motion, et cetera, ad nauseum. You all have, in the 15 years I've been here, gotten along very well. This community decides things clearly, but that doesn't mean that the danger that someday you wind up with someone on the Board of Aldermen who simply wants to be obstructive isn't always there. And if that danger's there, you need a way to proceed without leaving this giant club there, simply to destroy government in its tracks. The rules you have been given here, I have basically pilfered, lifted, borrowed, copied, and freely announced I plagiarized out of the City of Lee's Summit, okay? I did read them over before I gave them to you. I think Lee's Summit did an excellent job. The operative language, the place that I think you need to be clear on is on page 214 of your packet, okay, at the bottom. These procedural rules.
Because I don't have the big packet, I have the small packet.
1 of 9.
What, page 1 of 9?
Okay.
You didn't bring all of Mark's other boilerplate?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
bad, because I wouldn't have read it.
Page 1 of 9. These rules are intended to apply to the business of the Board of Aldermen, any subcommittees, and any other committees established by the city. That means this will apply to plans and zoning. This will apply to Citizens Advisory Committee. All the other subsequent or subparts of the city will have the same thing. This paragraph goes on to say, the rules replace the provision of Roberts, except Roberts may, in the discretion of the chair of that meeting, be used to inform the procedure. But, and here comes the real operative language, only procedural motions set out below are entertained. Procedural motions contained in Robert's Rules of Order, but not contained in these rules, are out of order, okay? In other words, if a obstructive member were to propose a motion based on Robert's Rules of Order, not contained within your 20 pages, okay? That's out of order, ab initio, the body moves on and makes a decision. What I'm concerned about, the reason I bring this forward to you is, I want this community to be able to make clear decisions. And removing Roberts as a possible roadblock will help make sure that the people who are responsible members of Plans and Zoning, or the Board of Aldermen, or the Citizen Advisory Committee, are able to make clear decisions on behalf of the people that sent them here. That's the reason this is there. I really don't have any other comments for you tonight. I have not heard from any of you specifically on the content of this. I did get one call from Alderman Ross about, why am I looking at this, which is an entirely reasonable question. That's why you're looking at this. Please look it over. It's my hope that if we don't hear back with specific objections, I'd like to tee this up for the first meeting in January for a first reading.
All right, comments or questions? Alderman Becker.
So, Mr. Rucker, can you clarify how this pertains to Article 4, community event support?
That's renumbering.
Just simply because what you're
That's
proposing is the current number of?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
trying to remove community event support
Okay.
back so I keep all the legislative business and the structure of city government on the same place.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Osteen.
I have one change request under section 110.340, order of business.
What page are you on, please?
Page 3 of 9 in the left-hand corner is what my packet states.
Right.
Can we reverse line 10 and line 11?
My thoughts, too.
Because that is how we have been conducting business in reverse order, with doing staff comments before we do alderman comments.
That is absolutely within your discretion. I will be happy to make that change. Sure.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not following you. What do you want to do?
The order of business right now states that we do alderman comments at the end of the meeting, then we do staff. But a few months ago, we decided let's reverse that.
I agree.
So then we can basically question staff on.
Perfect, yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Done.
Alderman Rucker.
Thank you.
I won't bore the rest of the aldermen tonight, but I have 20 corrections I'd like to get with Ed separately on. Of course, everybody knows I read the ordinances a little bit deeper.
Only 20? We've only gotten halfway through it?
Right.
Well, and tonight is a discussion item,
Yes,
so yeah, that's perfect, yes.
I'll be happy to sit with you. And there's most of it is some changes. There's a couple of things that I'm not real clear on, but
That's fine. That's great. At
the
your convenience.
concept and everything I support.
Very good. All right. Anyone else? All right, I think we have a direction. Thank you. Next, we have another discussion item. It's enacting a new section, required and prohibited terms and conditions in city contracts. City Attorney Ed Rucker.
More legal housekeeping. I figured we'd wait till December when you had quiet time. One of the things that Mike Welty and I do constantly is fight with vendors about terms and provisions of contracts. Vendors are always asking for their own language. This is an ordinance that proposes to place these things that we believe are important into the city code to simply make it far more difficult for a vendor to essentially get around us, okay? The issues that we run into, and let's just work our way through the draft real quickly. One is, we see constant requests for us to indemnify and defend a vendor, okay? I mean, I used to see requests for us to indemnify and defend engineers who are going to do business for us. I haven't seen that with Cochran. We ruled that out with them. They don't pull that nonsense. But, and literally, one engineer once looked at me and said, well, you have to understand, we can't take the risk of this if it doesn't work. And my answer was, well, honest to gosh, if you guys don't have enough confidence to stand behind your work, why would we want to let you design our infrastructure? Period. Okay? So we want to kill anything that says that we will defend or indemnify that. In Missouri law, there's a Missouri attorney, a general opinion that basically provides that governments are not supposed to do that. You divert future revenues, and it's literally beyond our capability to do, okay? It's just lousy public policy. The second thing I want as a required term is that if we're going to get sued, we're going to get sued here. We're not going to get sued in federal court. We're not going to get sued anywhere else. That vendors agree that if there's a legal dispute, it gets settled here, okay? They've come to us, they're doing business in our city, they might as well do business and have confidence with our judges. In terms of prohibited terms and conditions, this goes on to page 2. We're not going to diminish the standards of negligence. Oftentimes we see things where a vendor says, well, it's only gross negligence, okay? It's an attempt to narrow their scope of responsibility. Don't want to have anything to do with it. We see attempts to limit liability to only the amount paid for in the contract. In other words, you guys had a $35,000 contract, that's all you can recover from us. We may have done you $100,000 worth of damage, but you can only recover the $35,000. Well, no, you stand behind your work the same way anybody else does in normal life. There will be no claims of ownership of any intellectual property. We go round about this with engineers all the time, okay? We did designs for you, you can't use it. No, you did design for us, we paid for it. We use it any way we bloody well please, okay? You may not restrict our use of what we've bought from you, okay, as property. Provisions for damages contrary to the statutory common law I want to kill. The use of laws from any other states. Any reallocation of risk, a lot of this becomes legal boilerplate, okay? Towards the back on page, well, I'm sorry, Alderman Rucker, I only have the big packet number, 227 of 231, okay? Goes to one last section I wanted to call your attention to. Variances and imperfection in responses to bids and our requests for proposals. I want us to reserve the right to waive a variance or an imperfection. The issue becomes that sometimes we look at bids that arrive an hour late, okay, that are substantially better bids. I don't want to have to throw that bid out. It doesn't mean that you have to grant the bid, and staff won't recommend you grant the bid unless we think it's basically been a fair process. We, in fact, just had, and Tara pointed out, Mike and I were looking at this other bid, you come in several days late, and Tara said, wait a minute, we put the bid sheet on the bulletin board, and everybody knows what the number is, okay? And the answer was, well, okay, you got a real point there. So we're not going to take the late bid unless the late bidder can prove to the satisfaction of staff and then for the satisfaction of the elected officials that they did not know and were not influenced by that information, okay? I.e., and this may have been the vendor, I'm not sure where we are with this contract. There was one where there was a vendor who literally was 4 states away and didn't know, and their guy had quit. And there was no way they would have known what that number was, okay? Well, that's your decision. But I want to be able to bring that to you. So we want to reserve the right to say, if there's an imperfection, but it's going to save the taxpayers money, you guys get to make the decision as to whether to waive that imperfection or not. Staff will be clear with you. We will tell you flat out, this is fair. No, this isn't fair. This is ridiculous, okay? But we want to reserve that. Again, this is language that addresses common problems we have in our contracting. Nothing in this, if you do proceed with it, nothing in this will tie the city's hands to do anything, nor will you actually lose the right to waive any of these provisions, okay? You may see a contract where you say, I'm going to waive that, We'll be happy to waive jurisdiction. We'll be happy to waive another provision because it's a good enough deal for the taxpayers. You have the ability to do that, okay? You can do that, but this will sufficiently and I think significantly strengthen Mike's negotiating position with vendors as he's talking to them. He'll be able to say, no, everything in this ordinance, in this new section 135.085 has to be followed. It's part of our RFQ, and you guys have to follow it. And that will, I think, dispose of some of the extra time he spends negotiating contracts today.
All right, thank you. Alderman Rucker.
Question. So we passed this ordinance,
All right?
okay? You brought up in this situation I'm concerned or don't understand. So we passed the ordinance, we get a contract that comes in, and we really like it, but there's something in this ordinance that they just said they will not budge from,
Right.
okay? And we say, okay, we agree. Won't that take us a month? Well, won't that take us 2 readings to change that ordinance? Because we cannot change an ordinance just with one vote, can we? How do we change it? How do we make that change?
The ordinance by which you enter into the subsequent contract will clearly and definitely waive the provision of section XYZ of the Osage Beach Municipal Code. You will have it within your power to waive that section of the code as it applies to purchasing.
So the ordinance that we pass on the contract will have the language that
contract.
says we're not following our normal ordinance?
Right. The board is making a conscious decision that it's going to waive that provision. And if you're not comfortable with the language I have in this draft, we can put that kind of language in this draft as well to reserve that power for you.
I just trying to get in my mind the procedure on how that would go about, so, okay.
It basically, under contract law, what you have to have is the clear meeting of the minds. And what we would have to do for you all in this case, let's assume it's jurisdiction, okay, which is Camden County. And they say, no, we have to be able to remove this to federal court. Say, fine, but then you would have in your ordinance adopting the contract with Jones Company, okay, a specific procedure says, the board understands and recognizes that this contract is entered into an explicit waiver of the provision of section 135.085 that reserves jurisdiction only to Camden County. And the board does authorize and agree staff, the mayor and the city administrator, to enter into a contract that accepts a contract with also the possibility of removal to federal court. We'd have to write that specifically so that you, as elected officials, specifically understood what you were doing.
And this is discussion tonight, so
This is discussion
that's something he can write in there.
Right. Is that enough lawyer boredom for y'all, or you want more?
Any other input? Alderman Ross.
I support everything that's here, but I don't think it goes far enough. What I suggest, and I think it'd make life a whole lot easier, is that we develop a standard contract that the vendor signs, or they go pound sand. Okay? They sign our documents. We should never, ever sign theirs. This is what I worked under for many years. There was a lot of contention up front when we went to that. I could go into all the history, but you didn't do work for us as Taco Bell when I was there unless you signed our contract. And if you don't want to sign our contract, great. Go sign somebody else's contract. But we're not going to have this. We're not going to have Ed having to review everybody's individual contract and trying to figure out what they tried to sneak in and so on and so forth and waste all of Mike's time and Ed's time and so forth. Let's just put a standard contract together. I've got one I could help Ed with. I mentioned this 3 or 4 years ago. I think Ed and I have talked about this before. But at the end of the day, yes, and a whole lot of vendors are going to complain, but I don't want to do that. And so on. Well, you want to do work for us, do it our way, period. If we're paying, you want our money, it's green, or if you don't want our money, that's okay. But it will create a whole lot, I would think, and Ed, tell me if I'm wrong, we haven't discussed this, would make your life much simpler when it comes to contracts if they sign our contract and that's it.
We've made Mike and I have made some progress with contract forms. We're certainly not far enough along. I know exactly what you're talking about. When I was at Jackson County, we had much the same thing, which was a 2-page contract that we stapled the vendor's paperwork to the back of and said, this is our contract. You're bound by everything we say. Everything in there is inconsistent.
The RFP would include that contract? It would be part of, they would
RFP
know that
could
up
include
front. They would know, if they wanted to submit a bid, they would know what contract they would be entering into. And Ed wouldn't have to, if they sent a contract up that had 5 pages or 10 pages, he wouldn't have to dig through and make sure there's nothing in there that he has missed, if you will, okay? Now, this helps, don't get me wrong,
Right,
and I
this helps,
support.
and I agree with, I'm not sure where Mike is on that stuff. I don't speak out of turn for where he is on it, but yes, I agree with you, and we're moving sporadically in that direction, but this would be a help with that. The only other caveat I have is that we're not so burdened with contract business that we shouldn't look at this stuff. And I guess what I would never advise staff, nor will I, just willy-nilly take my 2 pieces of paper and put it on top of somebody else's document, sign it, and go from there. Because I don't know what kind of a fight I'm buying.
Well, they have to sign our contract
Right, they
first,
have to
and then we sign our contract.
Right. Oh, well, let's talk about that next week, because that's something, we can put that in as a provision of this ordinance that says, any contract with the city of Osage Beach is you sign it and bring it to us first. Okay.
And I think that if they
I-
sign our contract first, it'll be very simple, and your life will be very simple when it comes to
I
contracts. Ed.
support what Alderman Ross is talking about as well.
Keep it simple.
Very good.
I don't care how simple it is or how long it is, but I think it's our, we're paying the bill, we're the boss.
Yeah.
We're
We're the customer
We're telling you the rules.
when it comes to this
I
procurement.
think that's a consensus. Anybody else? All right, you have what you need, Ed?
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. All right, next we have discussion, proposed ballot issue, additional sales tax on retail sales of marijuana. City Administrator Gina Wood.
Yes, last but not least, right? So, as we all know, Amendment 3 passed November 8th by the voters. It does modify the language of the Missouri Constitution legalizing recreational marijuana. The bill becomes effective December 8th. However, the first day recreational marijuana is available, they're estimating, or maybe it's not an estimation, but it's February 6, 2023. So as of that point, cities will now treat this like other businesses. So many aspects of this amendment will affect different parts of staff, and I know I've challenged the department managers to read up on it. What area of bubble is it affected? I know the poor police has probably got many more spokes in that wheel than possibly others, but I know parks, public places, business license, anyway, there's several things that will affect personnel, and some more than others. But one of the first things that this amendment does allow, it does allow a consideration for an additional 3% tax to be imposed by the city on tangible personal property retail sales of adult use marijuana upon approval of voters. So the next availability of an election would be April. So if it's something that the board would want to consider, a question on the ballot, I'd like direction. It can be on a general, primary, or special election. Again, April 2023 is our general municipal election. Now, we do need certification of ballot questions for that April by the end of January. So we have a couple meetings should it want to be discussed. Based on past strategic planning sessions when we talked about additional taxes and consideration for taxes, there has been a theme from multiple aldermen of if we would pursue any additional tax options that the city may have. If so, what election timeframe, because there is sometimes strategy on that. And if so, should the city earmark all or any said portion of the tax? So you can do that officially in the ballot, as you all know, because I know we've talked about use taxes and police taxes and park taxes, but this is a new one available to us. So really, I would just like direction. There's been a couple, I know the mayor's had interest. I've talked to a couple other aldermen. So really, I would just like direction on how staff should research this. Now, at the time of my printing, so let me go back to my thoughts. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So we can officially add ballot language of what do we plan to do with it? Where's the need? Whether it's a time frame or there's options of that. Or we could also do that through spending plans. So you can do it either way. MML is very actively creating resources, and they did this week send out a draft ordinance. They did ask municipalities, please do not pass anything before December 8th, because that's when it goes into effect. But we got time, we're discussing this, so we've got time for a strategy. At the time that I did not have any estimates, but again, MML is in a very rush, like everyone else in Missouri, to try to figure out all these bits and pieces and how we tackle it proactively and not too much reactively. So information that I received this week, there are about currently 190 dispensaries open for business. The average dispensary at this time is making right around $184,000 a month. So based on, they do expect by this time next year, the number of dispensaries will obviously go up because it does change the state's regulation on how licensed dispensaries will work. So they expect that number to be an estimate probably around 205,000. So with that number of dispensaries and the statewide average revenues, or the statewide total revenues of nearly $90 million, the average dispensary will gross about $450,000 a month. If you add a 3% tax, now without adding a tax, we're still going to collect our regular sales tax because as of December 8th, they're like any other business. So with those estimates, 3%, the average dispensary, right now we have one licensed in Osage Beach. Is that correct, Tara? Yeah. So again, this time next year, we do know that those will change because of the regulations change. So that could, at minimum, be a tax collection at 3% additionally on top of our sales tax of anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 annually. So that's just an average based on all dispensaries. Some are busier than others. You know, I don't know how we compare ours compared to something in a big city, but that gives you some idea because at the time of this, I did not know. I think that's important when and if you want to consider earmarking it. Earmarks that we've talked about in the past, parks, public safety, and even ambulance service. Those are very public service items that is provided. So I'm not saying those are your only three options, but those have been items we've talked about in past strategic planning when we've talked about use tax or other ones. Transportation as well could be. So with that, I don't know the amounts. That's a new average, so that gives you some kind of idea what you're talking about annually. As that grows, that would get larger. So in all, I really am seeking direction on, is it something you want to consider? And if so, do we want to consider it on the first available ballot? In my opinion, election strategy is all about what's your story and how you're going to get out there and how you can tell the story, because we do have certain rules as far as staff on what we can talk about. So to help you market what you want on a ballot, the more preparation we have, the more staff can provide facts. You as elected body can go out and sell the story. And if so, do you want to consider earmarks, and what would that be? And what more information can I provide you to make that decision?
Alderman Becker.
Gene, I think you answered my question, but I just want to be completely clear. So as of December 8th, a recreational marijuana dispensary is automatically taxed, sales tax-wise, just like any other business in the city, correct?
Well, the bill becomes effective 8th, and the first day recreational marijuana is available,
Okay.
they're saying February 6th. So yes, the bill is effective.
Not so much hung up on the date, but just the fact that they are taxed at the same sales tax everybody else is.
At that point, cities now treat this like other businesses. Health and Senior Services on their website right now, which is the department that's really, I guess, pinned to manage, they've got to manage this transition. And again, I'm now speaking, I know some knowledge, but I might be getting a little on the gray area of my expertise, but they've got to have it, there's going to be a transition from the medical marijuana to the recreation and how this all works and how the licenses and transferring all these licenses to facilities that are open. So whether it's the 6th or whether it's December or February, cities, once the bill's effect, cities do treat it like other businesses, but whether or not that, which date will they actually have sales that's open?
Right, but the additional 3% would be on top of the regular sales tax
Correct.
that everybody gets charged.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Osteen.
I've got several things I'd like to ask. First of all, can somebody tell me or send me a list of what other retail products we charge additional tax on?
I can tell you, there's nothing we have additional tax on. We are, this is in my opinion, a very unorthodox product-specific tax. We do not, other than you have your motor vehicle tax that's separate, by separate bill, and you have your general sales tax. So unless it's exempt, maybe school holiday or that green day, there's no other options in the law to do this. This is new.
This is the bill that was passed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And within that is a
So in other
provision-
words, we can't do this with alcohol, we can't do this with tobacco. I know I've had some conversations
We
with
can't.
aldermen.
And
We can't. It
That is part of the
not-
concern that I have, is that
It is
we're
not.
going to arbitrarily tax a specific product, and I think we may get some pushback on that. My other question too, and it went back onto recreational use. Dispensaries are currently in place and licensed to provide medicinal use, correct?
Right.
So this tax would basically affect those individuals that use marijuana for medicinal use, or how do we differentiate how they're selling and what they're selling it for?
That is what the transition that is happening, because I'm
Well, I can kind of answer that a little bit, because the medical card will still give them their marijuana, and that's not an additional 3%. Without the medical card for recreation only, that would be the only one charging 3%.
If I could expand
So
on
let me
that.
go back to, Amendment 3 provides that existing medical marijuana facilities, referred to as medical facilities in Amendment 3, may convert their existing license with the department to a comprehensive license. So that's that transition that is happening between now, or December 8th, and February.
Or later.
Or later, because this is,
They get 60 days.
So the idea is that this dispensary, I think it's called Latitudes or something down here, can apply and, for lack of a better term, get a license to also sell recreational. But back to and I'm not sure where Tyler was going, but it's not automatically going to start paying sales tax, because prescriptions are not, there's no sales tax on prescriptions in the state of Missouri. Okay?
Correct.
Right, so until they obtain that license, if this one was to try to convert, until they obtain that license and begin selling on the, let's call it the recreational side, okay, there would be no additional sales tax coming from that business.
Right, and I'm going to jump in real quick, because the chief and I and city attorney had meetings with Latitude owners, and the way they explained it to us is the reason the February it starts in December, but it doesn't come on board till February, is because there's a 60-day wait time. They can apply in December, 60 days later, but it's a weird law, because yes, it's legal, but nobody can sell it yet because they can't get it yet, because you can't buy it yet in Missouri.
That's kind of how
But it's
it went
just a
with-
60 days.
It went that way with medical too, only it was a lot more 60 days, to tell you the truth. I think the first one, it was off, when we voted in November, and the first one opened in St. Louis in like August or something.
And on that same note, I'll just say too, and they were great. They really were. Just so I was going to say it at the end. I might as well just say it now. The owners called us and said, with this new law, what can we do? What do we need to know so we can do this by the letter of the law? And they also gave us, there's a couple of places in Arizona that did this years ago. We looked at their state statutes and their city statutes, excuse me, because there'll be some wording we'll need to look at later on our licensing and ordinances here in the city of Osage Beach. But the main thing is, and we did tell them, all right, I said that we can apply for the 3%, it's up to the board. And they seemed a little discouraged in that. They thought that would keep people in Eldon rather than coming down here, but I think pretty much what we see is most every city is going to be applying for it, it sounds like.
I've got mixed thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, from a revenue standpoint, yes, it's a great opportunity. But on the flip side, I don't like the idea of the city targeting a specific product. The only product the city is going to impose additional tax on, and I think we're going to get some pushback on that. So I'm open to discussing more, and this is just a discussion item. But
And the only reason I say is, the reason I brought up the fact is that is in the bill. Most bills for booze or cigarettes, whatever, that's not in the bill. They specifically put that in this bill for us to have that option. That's what, to me, what makes it unique.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mr. Ross.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Alderman Rose.
Go ahead.
I hope I can talk. I find it a windfall, and I think an extra 3%, I don't know how many stores that we can have. I forgot, there's a limit of how many stores that we can have within our city limits, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, now with this new recreation, that changes a lot of the previous medical recreation, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, it definitely needs to be earmarked, but I'd like to have it, if we would go forward with this, earmark it where the community would be receptive, something for the community. Ambulance, you mentioned, is fine. I was even thinking of maybe, do we have to earmark it? Does it have to be the same every year? If we had it earmarked for a couple years to go at a particular, organization or whatever, and then change it for the next 2 years. I'm just wondering about that, but.
If it's on the ballot, Phyllis, if it's earmarked on the ballot, we can't change it year over year.
Yeah, the ballot is the
Okay.
most restrictive, but
Okay.
then through the spending plan, you can choose by
Well,
budget, but that's,
Okay, but you know what, I'm thinking the citizens out there, gee, this is extra money that the city wants to do something to help our citizens to enjoy or whatever, rather it be earmarking it to go to help enhance the Magic Dragon trails, for one, and just seeing if to help with the ambulance, whatever. You mentioned ambulance, I didn't even think of ambulance, but beautification, something that people would be receptive to, think, hey, I think that's a good idea. Something that the city is helping them to enjoy. That's all where I'm coming from.
And I'll say this too, I'm sorry, Mr. Alderbeck, I was just going to say, and this is discussion tonight, and then once we do make a decision, if we do want to make this, move forward to put it on the ballot, to your point, Alderman Osteen, it's still a community decision. We're just simply saying, as a board, we see an opportunity here for extra revenue. So as a board, we would like to put this on the ballot and let the citizens of Osage Beach decide. And we would like to earmark the money rather than like a ambulance, it's once it's paid off, now what we do with the money, but you put it on something, whether it's transportation, beautification, whatever. But as a board, it's just a question moving forward that in the near future, because we need to have this done by January, would we like to put it on the ballot for the next election for the community to decide?
ambulance was brought up because ambulance, as you know, the general fund, which is what funds our police and our parks, our dispatch, our services in that area, ambulance is subsidized through the general fund, as you all know, in double percentages. But it is a service that our board and people voted in back in along many decades ago that we don't get a specific tax for like other districts do. And so ambulance, you know, would be something that it's like our board and our community made that decision, we would have ambulance service for our community, and it isn't tied to any tax at this time. So the general fund subsidizes it quite a bit and has for many decades.
I think general fund is too broad of a term.
No, but
Yeah, I do
ambulance, that's why I
too.
said ambulance,
too.
because then it goes to that public safety ambulance and,
But to be clear, it's not to purchase an ambulance, it would
No,
need to be
to
written for
fund the
ambulance
service.
services, yes.
ambulance
Yes,
service.
yes. Alderman Ross.
So I will just tell you that we had a discussion around this about a use tax, the internet sales tax, for lack of a better term, a few years ago. And I'm in the same place that I was then, and that is that unless we can demonstrate the need for this money and then explain and hold ourselves accountable to how we're going to utilize this money, then I have no interest and won't support putting it on the ballot. At the end of the day, we shouldn't tax people because we can. We should tax people because we need the money to provide a service that is needed or perceived to be needed. We are going to get 2% on every recreational sale that occurs that has never occurred. And the numbers that you just mentioned seem staggering, but okay, maybe. I mean, Tara came from Colorado, and she may agree with those because I know that she said that there was a lot of things that occurred in Colorado. And so I have no idea what the business is going to be in Osage Beach, okay? We may have 3 of these things. There's micro businesses, there's micro dispensaries that are also in this. It could be absolutely a windfall. I have no problem, but I don't really like taking people's money unless I think I know that there's a need to do so and demonstrate what. So, for example, as when I worked on the Citizens Advisory Committee, that, Parks was the one thing that, although they didn't recommend that we put something on the ballot, they were comfortable that if extra money was collected, it went to Parks. They were comfortable with that because they felt like that was something that was a deficit in our community. And so if we want to demonstrate how we're going to utilize that in the parks, whatever that might be, through a master planning, Eric's not here tonight, a master planning process or so forth, and let people know how we're going to use it and why we need that money, then I'd be glad to ask them the question. But I'm not going to support asking the question on something just because we can, so.
Well, and here's what I'll say. I'll respectfully disagree with you, Alderman Ross, only because the ambulance service, we do lose money on. And it's not a question, we just do. So we're losing money every year. If we have a way to recoup that, and like I said in our meeting with the gentleman from Latitude, I don't think somebody's going to plan to spend $100 on their recreational marijuana is going to really care another $3 to go to an ambulance service that the city of Osage Beach loses money on every year. That's my point.
If I could respond? If
Sure.
you don't mind, and then I'll, couple of things on that. One, I think there will be some people that do, and that it will be potentially competitive disadvantage if other cities don't. And secondly, after going through the soccer complex ballot issue, is apparently 3% is important to a lot of voters in this area, because 75% of them, I think at that time round numbers said, no, we don't want you charging 3% more for this. So that's all I have.
Alderman Osteen.
I just want to add a few things to this. Regardless of the item that we're attempting to tax, and regardless of the purpose it is for, I think anytime you've got a ballot initiative that says an increased tax or raised tax, et cetera, you automatically are going to get pushback from the public, regardless of what it's for, the reasoning behind it, et cetera. So I think it's an uphill battle to get this on the ballot and get it approved, if that is the route we do go. I'm going to use, for example, the lodging tax. That failed on the ballot how many times? 3 or 4 times by the citizens of the city. And guess what? We're not the ones staying at the hotels and motels. So therefore, really, it did not directly impact our pocketbook. But still, it did not pass 3 or 4 times because it was the overall perception of additional tax, more taxation. I'm just throwing it out there for thought.
Yeah. Alderman Rucker.
Couple comments. First of all, if we move forward, we need to be very cautious on what we say the money's going to be spent. I've heard ambulance. I'll be very honest. I'd like to get out of the ambulance business. This city could have gotten out of the ambulance business a number of years ago. This county could have done a more efficient job of providing an ambulance service a number of years ago that I could go into in great detail, but they didn't. There's a better cost-effective way to do it. So I bring that up only because we got to be cautious on as we move forward, if we earmark it for something that in future years all of a sudden is not needed or is not here. If you tie it into like parks, that's very general, that's very generic. General revenue is great, okay, and I would support that. I understand why some people are concerned about it, but then this year, if you need all kinds of support for the police because of the marijuana situation, because of special training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you could use the money. So think about that if we move forward. The other thing is why I think we possibly should move forward is you say you think people may not support this. Well, unfortunately, I didn't do my homework. I had it on my brain to do it, but I didn't get it done. How many people in the city of Osage Beach voted no?
On what?
People that didn't want the recreational marijuana to begin with.
It failed in Camden.
I voted no. I'll say it. And so my thoughts is I voted no. I didn't want it. So maybe those folks that voted no are saying, well, daggone it, since we're going to get it, I want it taxed. So they didn't want it in the first place. So that could be a number that could be of value for us to take into consideration of what those no voters how strong are they? And would they be the ones that are yes voting for this because they didn't get what they wanted there? Just a thought. That's just another way to look at it and think about what the voters may do. I have been involved in many tax proposals, bond issues throughout my career. And I am a firm believer, proper education, proper advising and tell people what they're voting for and showing them where it's going, you will be successful. You've got to educate the voters. They have to be educated. And if you don't have a good program to give them, maybe you don't deserve to have it passed. So I think that's something that has to be a commitment that we would do. I don't care what the issue is that we put to the voters. But if this one here, we have to make a commitment to educate the people so that they're aware of it. And we have to be committed to it, and we have to make sure that we feel it's a good program. Because if not, then that's not any good. That was it.
No, it was a great point on the general fund and the ambulance issue. Alderman Becker.
Would this be a topic of consideration for the Citizens Advisory Committee?
Probably.
Depends on the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, in order to do that
It's a
prior to
timeline.
January is going to be tough.
That's not the only time we can put it on.
No, it's just the
First
first next
time,
available.
right.
It's just the next available.
Yeah, but is it only April?
No. You can do special election, general election, yeah, but April's the next election for us.
Is there a cost to put it on?
Yes.
Okay. You have any idea what that general range is? 20
It's
grand?
prorated. Tara, would you have a guess? You know, on an April election, it's gonna be a different cost than the big November election, especially if it's a presidential election. You've got lots of people putting in on the ballot, so you get to split the pie a lot of ways. April election, we're the only reason to have elections, so we're already doing ballots. We're just adding a question versus our aldermen, so.
I don't have any idea.
Basically, Richard, how that works is they take all the cost of what it costs to put that election on, and then they divvy it up on, depending on how many people they have that are involved. And like Gina said, the April one would probably be very minimal. If you do it in August and you're the only one,
You get all the costs.
you've got all the costs.
Well, I'm sorry.
Following on that, just three legal points, just to be real quick. In terms of the ballot costs, I think you guys have covered that completely, but we can find that out. Two, in terms of ballot language, okay? Remember, the ballot language is a promise to the voters, and you cannot undo it unless you go back to the voters. The best ballot language I was involved with was the Chiefs and Royals stadiums when we redid those in 2006. And literally, the question was, shall the county impose a 3/8 sales tax to fund improvements at Arrowhead Stadium and Kaufman to keep the Chiefs and Royals for another 25 years? At least you can write a specific promise into that ballot language for how you will spend that money. But when you do, you're committed. The other option you have, which we haven't talked about at all night, it's just throw out there, is you can also sunset this tax. You have it within your power to say, we're going to impose this tax for a period of 7 years. And then it goes back to the voters for reauthorization. There's a community-backed anti-drug sales tax in Jackson County in Kansas City that has to be reauthorized every 7 years, okay? So that the voters then are able to hold elected officials accountable for the spending of that money, and if they don't think they're getting their money's worth, they can kill the tax. You all would have it within your power to say, this tax will be imposed for a period of X, okay? And then after that period, that tax can come back automatically for renewal on a specific election date, okay? And the community can decide, do we want to keep it or not?
I'll say this. I'm sorry, Alderman Ross.
For Kevin, I looked up on the county clerk, and this is just in Camden County, I didn't go to Miller, okay? But the vote was 1,099 against, 1,076 for, so it was 49.47 to 50.53. It was split just about right down the middle.
I'll say this, and it's a board decision, obviously, but here's what I would like to see happen. I would like to get some sort of motion, not tonight, I'm sorry, but What's that?
Direction?
Direction, because here's what I'm looking at. If we choose not to put it on this ballot, and we say, let's wait a while, then you're gonna have basically a year of people purchasing and then try to tax them. After a year of not paying taxes, and all of a sudden now you're gonna tax these people, I think it'd be harder in order to tax them. And I think because they specifically put it in Amendment 3 that we could do this in order to help sell the program, so why wouldn't we take advantage of what they put in the bill themselves? And it's not taxing the ballpark or the soccer field or whatever. This is something brand new. I just feel if we don't get this out of the gate, it's gonna be harder to recuperate later, and it might be an extra revenue for the citizens of Osage Beach. So what I would like to see is we get some direction, if we can get at least earmark it some way with general fund or whatever, let the board decide on it, and then put it to the general public.
Well, the sooner the better we, as staff, have, I know Ed's created a draft ordinance, MML just this week come up with their recommended draft ordinance. Earmark, if you need more information to decide what that point is, we have 3 more meetings before the deadline to certify ballot language. So we have 3, you're gonna meet 3 more times before Tara will need some time, or Ed and I, to finalize, hey, this is what the ballot's gonna look like. So you've got three times to modify it.
What do you folks think about mulling it over, put it on the agenda for the next meeting as another discussion item, and maybe see if we can,
Maybe we have a draft with some options for some different, just plug in the names, okay.
that sound okay? All right, thank you, everybody. All right, now we're gonna move on to staff communications. We'll start with Gina Wood, City Administrator, please.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. First and foremost, I want to welcome Mike Ray. He is 3 days in to the job and has still come back. So I appreciate that. He has jumped in 2 feet first, drinking from a water hose, and I told him, I said, just as fast as you want it, I will be throwing stuff at you, and he's getting around to meet staff, so we do welcome him. I'm glad he's here, and I've told him he can kick me out of his office anytime if I'm bugging him too much, so.
Like Mike, Michael, or what?
Just, yeah.
Another Michael.
Mike or Michael, and I try to be formal, but it's Mike is what's sticking, so Mike Ray is probably what he's, because we do have a few Mikes. Second, I know Eric had to work the light park tonight unexpectedly, so he's not here. Mike's on vacation, but the park master plan. I did get CC'd on an email. Staff is expecting that possibly the end of next week. So they will still need to review. So Mike has tentatively, according to the email, one of the meetings in January, if not the first meeting in January, presenting that to the Board of Aldermen, the final draft. So we're very, very close. It's a little bit behind than what we initially anticipated, but given some factors uncontrollably. So you will see that soon. Other than that, that's all I have.
All right. City Clerk, Tara Barrett.
Just want to remind everybody that you can pick up your candidate packets Tuesday, December 6th, yes, at 8 a.m. I'll be here at 7:45 because I know that everybody's gonna be knocking down my door. Bob, Tyler, Richard, just saying.
I'm getting mine on the 27th.
At 5 o'clock, you better be in here. So, yeah, that's all I have, and the packets are ready. So, make sure you're gonna get that done. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Treasurer, Carrie Bell. Nothing? All right, City Attorney, Ed Rucker.
Everything's quiet. You've heard enough from me tonight.
Chief Davis.
We have our cadet, or recruit that's in the academy. She graduates December 16th, a couple weeks away. And we're doing our annual Shop with a Cop. We've got 30 kiddos we'll be shopping with on December 13th.
All right, thank you very much. City Planner, Kerry Patterson.
Nothing for me, Mayor.
All right, Human Resource Specialist, Michael Ray, would you like to say anything tonight?
Not at this time.
All right, well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Public Works, Kerry Crooks. Kevin Crooks, sorry. Actually, I meant to say City Planner, but we'll go with this.
Fairfield. Carrie, if you're watching at home, you're up. The LEAP program is marching on. We've been on Bluff Road, the Bluff Road area this whole week. We do have a hiccup. One of the two diesel-powered Leaf Vac trailers is down. It's not time to panic yet. We're going to get some parts here hopefully next week. We're not behind per se. It's better to be behind by experience than be ahead. People get upset if you pass them by and they don't have their leaves out, so that's okay. We're going to make that up with a couple extra hours of daylight that we have, work until about 5, and then hopefully we'll maintain the schedule that we have. That's all I got.
All right, thank you very much. City Planner, Kevin Patterson. No, on purpose. All right, IT Specialist, Michael Bean.
Nothing, sir.
All right, Ty Dinsdale, Airport Manager.
Nothing to say.
All right, thank you. Mitchell Moon, Economic Development Specialist.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the board. I want to thank you guys for really just the honor and the privilege to be a cheerleader on behalf of Osage Beach. Today I spent the whole day with Eric Gregory, our Parks and Recreation Manager, and his employee, Jacob Alexander. We really just got to cheerlead the wonderful things about Osage Beach to community members across the state of Missouri and executive departments within the state of Missouri government. This job, this role, it's a real pleasure. When you look at our city's mission statement, the last line says to be a premier visitor destination for the Lake of the Ozarks. Well, when people ask me what does an economic developer do for the city, I said, well, I guess I want to be the premier location for business owners and employees. With that being said, Gina and I have a couple projects that are in the works right now. You guys will be updated with those shortly. But other than that, all is very well in the Office of Economic Development.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Alderman Rucker.
Just want
We
to,
skipped Carrie Bell.
I'm so sorry, Karen. Oh, I
Did
did?
we?
first one.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
even hear you. I'm so sorry.
Now you got me all flustered.
It was all the Carries and Kevins
I
got me
know.
all mixed up.
All right.
Okay. Sorry.
Alderman Rucker.
Just thank you to the Transportation Department and the LEAF program, and they are doing a good job. They're out there, and they were down my street, and great job. I chatted with the guys for a little bit, tried to give them something to drink, some water, and they didn't need water.
Water.
Yeah. So, but good job, Kevin. They hats off to them. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Alderman Schuman.
Just welcome Mike for HR department. That's going to be a big department. So thank you for filling that position, and that's all I got.
All right, Alderman Becker.
Welcome, Mike, and Merry Christmas. Isn't this the last time we get together?
No, we're
Yeah, one more time.
One more.
Tylenol with codeine is off.
You're not driving, are you?
Alderman Osteen.
Gina, can you update me on where we're at with the budget process for 2023? I know in light of the grant denials, as well as there are some outstanding issues regarding pay increases, et cetera,
Well, I am plugging away. I'm hoping, because I've had a lot of here and there. I've got all the data in the budget for the HR changes. So that in of itself, it wasn't any big deal. It maybe took a little longer around things. But the big tipping point, as I said in that email, was we got word we did not get those 2 big grants. That potentially has a material financial effect on water and sewer. Kevin and I, if I don't catch up with him tomorrow, Monday, I have to catch up with him because I want to finalize what the net dollar change is and get with him on priorities. So draft 2 will be presented to you next week in the packet. First and second reading will be on the December 15th. As soon as I get with Kevin, I'll get it to you as soon as possible. I will still present you with the balanced budget. If there has to be things cut based on the department's priorities, I will list those separately. So when you address the first reading, you can, make modifications of my recommendation. I don't know yet the bottom line. Water seems to most likely isn't going to be the biggest effect, but sewer, that was a very large grant with some very large projects, and pieces of those projects are going to be required to stay in the budget. One's tied to some claims we're currently dealing with. But my goal was by the end of the day tomorrow, by the time I leave tomorrow, whatever time that would be, to have a draft 2 to you with explanation. So you at least have even an extra week to look at it since we're throwing on the 2nd, but it likely could be Monday.
Okay. My other item is regarding the leaf pickup, Kevin. Apparently, you're coming to my neighborhood at the wrong time. There is a wind advisory in effect for tomorrow. After Tuesday's winds, the $180 I spent to have my lawn done was a moot point because all those leaves are back where they started. So after tomorrow's wind advisory, might as well skip my neighborhood. No, I face waterfront. It comes straight across the channel and, yeah. Anyway, just a little side note there. That's all.
All right, Alderman Rose.
Oh, I welcome, Mike. I hope you will enjoy your new position, and I'm sure we will enjoy having you. But other than that, I'm saving my voice to the next meeting, and then I'll expound a lot. Thank you.
We appreciate the warning.
Alderman Ross.
Welcome, Mike. We had a chance to talk this morning. I really appreciated your perspective. And also, the only other thing I have is I just want to recognize Eric and the park staff. The Christmas lights were awesome. I think it gets better every year. And for a new guy, I thought he did, as well, or if not better, than the person that he succeeded. So great job. And I'm sorry he's not here to hear that, but hopefully someone get him that message. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. I only have 2 things. One is on the MML conference, not conference, with 101 marijuana we had a few weeks ago. I think a few of you were there. I did reach out to the attorney that did that presentation, and he sent to me the slideshow that he had that night. He emailed it to me. So if anybody wants that, shoot me an email. I'll forward it on to you. It's kind of informative. It's going to be kind of a learning process as we move forward. And my comments were certainly nothing against Latitude the voters spoke. I just see the Amendment 3 gave us the opportunity to get some extra revenue, and you know my opinion on that. But I'll be happy to send that information to you as we move along. And the other thing is the 10th, a week from Saturday, is the Christmas parade down at the dam. So go out and attend. It's always a good time. I think the forecast is supposed to be about 45 and sunny as of now. So bring the family and have a good time. And that's all I have.
Does anybody know if they're throwing candy at the
They
parade?
cannot throw candy. They can pass it out, and you cannot have any live Santa on your float.
Really?
My grandson was
Because they're going to have a Santa at the very end, so they don't want to, But no, they'll be passing out candy, but they cannot throw candy.
Guess who the marshal is?
What's that?
Guess who the grand marshal is?
Who?
Congrats.
Well, congratulations. All right.
I guess they couldn't find anybody else that was as old as
Well
I am.
deserved, well deserved.
All right, if there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Alderman Rose, Alderman Rucker, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion adjourned. Thanks, folks.
It's not too shabby. I don't know. All these discussions.
Please.
All right, hey.